Hello. Now what? Now what, you may say? Hey, Joan, if you are watching, hit the link in email. What's up, Snuggles? What is up, Snuggles? Okay, so you guys were here and we had some difficulties. We built the plane as we fly it. We continue to go. There is something inherent in the topic that we're looking at that is very important to the psychological health of everyone. It has a thing about self-esteem, also has to do with accountability, has to do with externalizations everywhere. Talking about not feeling like something because the world has not told you that you're something. Talking about not having a particular experience, therefore, the world hasn't told you what you should be, what you should think, how you should feel, so on and so forth. This is the essence of bad self esteem. It is not just a question of social awkwardness, being shy, so on and so forth. Those things are basic, those things are simpler. Those things are not so complicated after all. This question of low self esteem and unaccountability of a certain kind is a particular psychological trap. And there are ways of getting out of there. Or are there not, Joan? When you say things in your channel, for example, about self awareness and meditation, mindfulness, the ego, so on and so forth, will any of that message help in this particular situation?
Yeah, absolutely. I talk a lot about the ego and how the ego survives off of polar opposites. So, a lot of people talk about like, oh, you're feeding the ego, stop telling him how good he is or whatever. But there's also feeding the ego saying like, you being sorry for yourself, like, oh my God, the world hates me. Like she's feeding her ego with the opposite end of it, like, low self-esteem. She doesn't feel like she deserves. I mean, that's the other thing. She hasn't said anything like, oh, I deserve better than this, but she's self-pitying, which I mean, I definitely can sympathize that when you're young in high school, you're figuring out who you are and what you want and how you see yourself. You know, you kind of have a little bit of that self-pity, but she's
Mm-hmm.
hasn't come to that self-awareness yet. Like she hasn't asked like, why is this happening to me? What do I have to do for me to put myself in better situations instead of attracting the wrong guy all the time? So
How do you improve a particular social characteristic or attribute? Right. So what have
well,
you had to do? Just pick one or two and say, okay, this is how first of all evaluated myself and said, hey, tell us how you're able to stop and be candid enough with yourself to evaluate yourself and be like, maybe I need to improve in this particular regard. And then how did you improve it?
Well, first off, you have to stop caring what other people think of you. You have the most important thing is what you think of yourself in regards to how to build yourself up. Like what does she think of herself? And then she has to ask her like all the questions like do I deserve better? Do I want better? She has to figure out what she wants for herself, what will make her feel better about herself, but she hasn't come to that self-awareness. And it takes time to get. She probably has to hit a certain point in her life where she's like, damn, like I just let everybody around me, my external world, dictate where my life is going to go.
Mm-hmm.
So she needs to just cut herself off from all those external things for a moment and just self-reflect like, hey, what am I, what do I want? It comes down to that. What does she want? And she still hasn't made that clear. She hasn't said, I want to be with a guy who loves me and, that supports me. And I want to be with someone that I can truly care about and truly cares about me. She needs to know what she wants. I know dating is tough. I think she's from LA, right? I can't remember.
Interest. I believe so.
Yeah,
I believe so.
I mean, I've been through the LA dating scene. It is tough. It's really like brutal dating in LA. However, you have to figure out, going out into the world, no matter where you go, you have to figure out what you want for yourself and then focus on that path that you want for yourself. You have to create your own dating path and your relationship path based on what you want. So I think going back to what you said, like, she needs to cut out all the outside opinions and then figure out like how she sees herself.
Okay, when it comes to a particular social skill, how does one how do you improve your social skills? Can you give us an example of a social skill that you improved? Because she has referenced people said I was awkward, people said I was this, people said I was that,
Hmm.
people said I would not be good in a relationship, but she has not opened up as to well what she did, if anything, about that or what
Hmm.
that looks like. So, example from you, like, how do you let's say I want to be better at interpersonal uh shall we say, communication.
Hmm.
And then I take some of the, I systematize and take some of the aspects of things that I know about group communication and so on and so forth, right? And then I practice certain things. I practice mirroring. I practice active listening, which is a silly phrase. It's just listening, you know.
Right.
Like you're either listening or you're not. What's this active listening stuff? It's like just shut up. You were not listening before. Now you're listening. Oh, I practice active listening. So these kinds of things. Is there anything in your any examples that you can give as far as how you improve certain skills that made you better in the social game, if you will?
Right. The first thing is you have to embrace yourself for who you are at this point. Like if she thinks she's weird, it's like, well, embrace the weird and then use that as your charm. Like I just figured out, like, okay, what's charming about my? I mean, I see myself as weird, but like, I embrace my own weirdness and I just go out and just talk to people. And yeah, in one of my videos about how to I forgot what it was called. Well, anyways, it's like your people skills, right? It's just
Hmm.
how do you improve your people skills? You just have to put yourself out there. You just have to be so interested in other people and just really figure that out. Like just talk to people. I mean, it's tough when if you're introverted or shy or have low self-esteem, but again, she has to make a decision for herself. Like, how does she want to see herself? And who cares what other people think of you? You just have to put yourself out there. And you just have to meet different types of people. The moment you see a red flag, you move on. Don't hold on to somebody who's like, oh my God, finally somebody wanted to go out with me. And then,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, I'm kind of rambling about what she's been talking about. But, again, she has to make a decision for herself, decide what how she sees herself, and then just put herself out there as who she sees herself as and just embrace it. And, people will like it or people won't.
Indeed. So, social skills, you've given us some tips, right? And you're like, well, there's this aspect of and then you talked about how you the aspect of accountability. Okay?
Mhm.
The aspect of accountability, which is absolutely clear. Because why is this important? Because this is something that everybody could go about looking at the world with blame mechanics, looking at the world saying, my parents were strict. The church told me this. Those people across the street told me I was weird. And on and on and on. And at infinitum, I always give the example of the truck driver analogy. If you get hit by a truck and the billionaire Jeff Bezos is driving it and they're 100% responsible and they go, you and the lead attorney sue Jeff Bezos and you go to court and you win $1 billion, you're still responsible for doing the physical therapy. Jeff Bezos cannot walk that treadmill for you. Jeff Bezos cannot take accountability for you. Jeff Bezos cannot do the psychotherapy for you to be able to overcome the trauma, so on and so forth. No matter how much you point the finger at him, no matter how much he is willing to help, it is just absolutely irrelevant because responsibility, which is about the power to make change, lies 100% with you. Like
Exactly.
it's
Yeah, it is. It's the way you perceive the world. And she has a very negative outlook in her dating life. And if she has that negative outlook, every guy that she's going to come across, she's going to project that. And clearly they pick up on it. I mean, it's unfortunate that she's run into guys that treat her that way, but she also has, I mean, that's the thing too. Like just from my experience, like if I'm just confident, like and confident in myself, whether they like me or not, like they I feel like the guy picks up on that. Like, oh, she's confident. I mean, she's not my type, but she knows what she wants. Okay, is it gonna work? It doesn't matter. But at the end of the day, she needs to figure out how she sees herself. She can change her perspective on dating. It's like, hey, let me give this another chance. The other thing, it's like it sounds like she's just given up. She's given up on dating. She's given up on men, and she's given up on having children. I mean, she's 37. I mean, if you're healthy, you could still have kids. But again, she's giving up, and that's already the problem there. You don't give up. You have to change your perspective. You have to change the way you see people. And then change. I mean, you guys change the way you see yourself before you can even change how you see people.
Got it. And you see the comment here on the screen. Shout out to Tavana Perry in the house, and also shout out to the $2 super chat from Ja G. Shout out to you. So 100%, and as I explained earlier, like whether I be chopping down metaphorical trees in just terms of concepts about killing your inner biatch or whatever, and getting up there every day and doing that 16-hour work week, and devil may cry about your excuses and so on and so forth, or whether it may be in more subtle things that are in the social landscape, such as relationships and such, right? Mm-hmm. There is a, shall I say, scientific approach, but also a practical, pragmatic, and realistic approach that I take to the conversation, and also that I encourage. So it's not a personal attack, if you will. However, there's something about the, oh, well, you don't know my particular story, or you're not in my particular intersectional node vis-a-vis characteristics which are socially significant. Let's say race, class, economic status, my background, my culture, so on and so forth. I think that the idea that we should create those kinds of separations in terms of commentary, right, will lead you to just a war of all against all eventually, because it's just going to end in solipsism. Everybody's going to be in their own bubble, because there is a way of drawing a bubble around every individual, right? Because I don't experience the world as you do, the way you do, right? Hence, how can I comment? However, there is the thing called insecurity. There is the thing called low self-esteem, which is different from these other things. And there is the thing called talking about the external world to give you all your value, and meeting all the bad things in the external world, but not wondering what you are doing perhaps internally to reflect it, that to which we are all prone, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't know if you had anything to add to that, or if, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's common. It just happens. It's social pressures, and with how people, you can't help but feel affected by the way people see you. But the more you build yourself up, no matter what your background is, how you grew up, if you choose to go beyond what the physical world is perceiving you as, if you can look outside of that, look outside of yourself, look outside of the world around you, and then focus on what you want and who you are, then that, you again, like, you can change your perspective. I mean, it doesn't matter how you look or where you come from culturally. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess just kind of going off of like the comment from earlier, it's, yeah, everybody experiences things differently. However, we are all completely capable of taking control of our lives by changing our perspective of ourselves.
And only us can do it with the truck driver analogy.
No matter,
it's not even possible for someone else to do it.
You can't depend on other people to build you up. You really can't. You can't rely on that. You have to depend on yourself, because you're the only one who can change the way you see yourself. You can't, like, even like with a partner or your friends, like they whatever they say to build you up, will you take that in, or are you still going to see your world the way you do? Again, it always starts within yourself, and then once you figure that out, once you tap into that, suddenly the world is a totally different place, and you really just have to start with yourself.
Easy for you to say. Shout out. That's what they would say.
I know.
That
Yeah.
is what they would say.
Again, you guys didn't
Now,
experience my life the way I did. You don't know what I've been through.
exactly. Okay. So that thing about, seeing the bad out there in the world, and then there's that whole "you are what you attract" thing, or you attract blah blah blah, maybe BS, maybe not. Why is it not bullshit? Or what is to be said if you keep encountering certain kinds of situations? My default, for example, okay, let me practical advice for not doing this thing where you're not falling into blame mechanics. I keep calling it blame mechanics. It's not my phrase, but I think that it is a key thing when it comes to critical thinking, and critical thinking is key in critical aspects of your life, which means your whole trajectory of your life, your whole biography, and so on and so forth is absolutely tied to this concept of being able to free yourself emotionally from blame mechanics. Because critical thinking is a boring phrase. Like, what the hell does that mean? It's like, again, active listening. In other words, critical thinking is just thinking. There's nothing, it's critical thinking, and then there's non-critical thinking. How come we never hear of non-critical thinking? Anyways, but the point is, the reason why people say think critically or critical thinking, blah, 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 is not because, oh, I need to practice my logic. No, that's not the problem. That's not the hurdle. The hurdle is an emotional one. The reason why you don't think critically in real time about your life is because of emotional hurdles, and one of which is tied up in blame mechanics, right?
Mm-hmm.
About fault finding, about talking about Jeff Bezos being, in this particular case, the church, her parents, the people who did not give her the time of day in this particular this or that. And your Jeff Bezos in your life could be many, many, many other things that you're looking around. And that's why you're not thinking critically. That's why you're not seeing opportunities as they pass by. That's why you don't have the positive mindset. And that's why you're attracting the kinds of things that you're attracting. So again, this thing about looking at the world and seeing all the bad things happening out there and not wondering about the internal. Speak more to that, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, there's bad things going on in the world. There's bad things that has happened throughout history, but what you need to focus on is now. Okay, where are you right now, and how would you like to move forward with from where you are right now? And everyone is completely capable of doing that. Sometimes it's just harder to get to that point, but everyone's completely capable of taking control of their own life and how they see the world. I mean, yes, there's just some things you just have to accept. Whatever's happened in the past, it's done. You know, you can't change that. You can't keep blaming the past, because what does that really do? You know, does that improve your situation? Just blaming the past? No, you can just move on, accept that it's done, and then just move forward. And yeah, I mean, bad stuff happens, but you have to be strong. You got to find that power in you, and you just have, again, like the more you're aware of how you see yourself, the more you start to see the world in a way that suits you. Because you're blaming the outside world so much, you're not seeing the good that's right in front of you. And maybe, for all you know, she's maybe missed out on some great guys because she's so focused on the bad guys.
Okay, so when you talked about the difficulty of a dating scene, and I think that perhaps it may be um, because she talks about certain difficulties that she's having, and
Hmm.
we're able to kind of demarcate the borders of it, where it's like, okay, these kinds of people are approaching. Maybe I don't really want those kinds of people, but these kind of people are not wanting to stick around. I was insecure about this, that, and the other.
Hmm.
Um, when you say, "Oh, LA dating scene is difficult," what does that even mean? When people say dating scene is difficult, what does that mean? You guys are fighting out there? It's a knife fight.
There's lots of options. That's the difficult part. I mean,
Hmm.
there's like 4 million people in LA, city of LA. I think 10
So,
million in the county. Yeah,
hmm
there's just lots of options. There's just a lot of very interesting people that you meet in LA. And as far as like my experience from it, at some point I didn't really know what I want, and that's why I, met whoever I met. And at some point it came with to my conclusion, like, okay, this is what I want, this is what I don't want. And then once I made a decision, like, okay, this is the kind of person I want to be with. I mean, I wasn't, I was still open to like what else could be out there, what type of person could be out there, but I knew right away, like, okay, I don't like the way this guy treats me. Done. I'm not gonna hold on to like, oh, maybe it might work. But yeah, I mean,
yeah.
it's tough. Again, it's just because with LA, there's just a lot of options. There's the problem too with like online dating, like your your options are unlimited, so you're constantly looking for something better. And that's the thing too with people in LA. They realized they could possibly find something better, but as far as maybe for her, she's just she's just got caught up in such bad experiences that I mean, like I said earlier, it sounds like she just gave up on herself, and you can't do that. I mean, you shouldn't do that. I mean, if she wants to give up, then that's that. But she shouldn't.
Okay, so I'm gonna attempt to share it again. Maybe we'll get struck down again, but hey, the life YOLO, as they say, right?
YOLO.
So let's see if we can hear this. Fair use.
To get married. Now, remember, I had just said that, right? I had just said I never really saw myself as someone's wife. However, I did want to make sure that whatever baby, whatever life I produced came from a situation where I was loved. So we didn't have to lock it down for the rest of our lives, but yeah, let's lock it down. Let's be friends that really understand each other and that really enjoy spending time together. Like, we love each other. And I didn't think that was going to be so hard, but it was. And I was about 30 when I met this guy. I was about 25 when I dealt with the verbally abusive guy. And then I went into my 30s, and I can be honest with you, it's been the worst time of my life as far as trying to find a partner. And right when I was 35 years old, which is when they tell you, hey, pregnancies after this are tough. Right when I was 35, I met a guy, and I thought on the surface he was a professor, he was an artist, he was all of these things. I thought, okay, well, this will be a chance for me. He ended up being someone who really, really dealt with paranoid delusions. He was the kind of person that kept painter's tape on the cover of his phone. And he was so paranoid that he actually he was the kind of person that kept painter's tape on the camera of his phone. And he was so paranoid that he actually never even gave me his real phone number. He gave me a Google Voice number. And I was such an idiot at the time that I didn't even know that in order to have a Google Voice phone number, you actually have a real phone number that it connects to, right? So that you can have conversations with people on your phone. And I let him get away with this because at the time I was living in LA, and he was the first dude in LA that wanted to see me consistently. Most men in LA, that was not their vibe. They did not care to see me consistently. And I really struggled with that because I would say from about the ages of 32 to 34 were the ages where I pined most intensely to meet a partner and to be able to work on my plan of having a baby. And it was impossible. It was out of my reach. So I meet this guy, and I think, okay, this might work. He basically pretended to be one person. And I did a little bit of digging and found out he was somebody completely else. He told me he had no social media accounts. He didn't have this. He didn't have that. He had it all. He never invited me over to his house. I didn't know any of his friends. He was very manipulative, very secretive. It took me a while to realize that he was very ill. And I fell into being around him because I was so desperate and so lonely. Anyway.
So the problems with these people, the problems with Professor Artist type there was a paranoid schizophrenic or something. Yeah,
I mean, again, she needs to figure out that she deserves better than that. I mean, don't just because, I mean, she said that she was so desperate to meet somebody, but you can't, I mean, you can't do something out of desperation. It just never works. You have to figure out, that you deserve better, what you want.
Yeah, everybody is desperate. Okay, so here's my pushback on that, right? There's a certain kind of antiseptic, clean room, surgical approach to life and relationships in terms of the ideal that people put out there. Oh, you don't do things out of desperation. Don't know this. Is like, if you're actually pursuing anything in life, let's say it's a business or whatever endeavor worthwhile, you're crazy, desperate, sweating bricks, sweating, shitting bricks, as they say, confused, delusional, perhaps crazy sometimes, like, oh, that was a silly mistake, so on and so forth. It is chaos out there. hence, my thing is this: why not the acceptance of chaos and then the looking at the mechanisms of chaos rather than isolating it again in the external? Number one, do you agree that chaos is just kind of part of the game? And even when you talk about your ego control, all that kind of stuff, it's not it's not avoiding chaos. It's just like it's more of an acceptance of chaos, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So if it is true that it is chaos that's out there and it should be an acceptance of chaos, there's a certain kind of pristine thing that people are comparing stuff with, like, oh, to not be desperate. It's like, what the hell does that even mean? Like, or when you say love, I have a personal issue with that word because I think it's like it's like the universe, the word. It's like it just contains everything and sugar, spice, everything nice, a feeling. Oh no, but there's philo and then agape and then this. Like even then, still, it's still just like okay, whatever. So, point being, the critical thinking aspect of things, okay, which is really where you're avoiding the blame mechanics, you're avoiding of, this view of the world that says that things have to be non-chaotic, pristine, and clean. Otherwise, things are going to go wrong. And then you manifest the wrongness because you're going into the world with that attitude.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I mean, yeah, because she went through a number of people, and it's kind of interesting. It's kind of interesting there. Okay, well, let's go on now because I think it'll get down to the nitty gritty.
Mm-hmm.
The nitty gritty of the situation is about to make itself apparent. Let's see.
I ended up getting pregnant in that situation. I miscarried. And while I realized now that it was the miscarriage for me was, I don't want to say a blessing, but kind of serendipitous because I miscarried in the summer of 2019. I would have given birth in February of 2020, and then we would have gone into a pandemic and I would have been stuck, dealing with him. I found out about how much he had lied to me in the summer of 2019. I would have been stuck dealing with him and, trying to function as a new mother in the middle of coronavirus with this manipulative guy as my baby's daddy. Like it would have been a really rough situation for me. So, but it took me a while to realize that because I also saw it as my last opportunity to ever get pregnant. Because of the fact that when that happened to me, it was sort of like the last straw in a long list of terrible, terrible romantic experiences. It happened to me at 35, which a lot of people say should honestly be the cutoff of women trying to have babies. Now, I know that women have babies into their 40s, but I also know that that's rare. And I also know that, especially for a Black woman, when we deal with such high levels of matricide, we deal with things like eclampsia and preeclampsia way more. High blood pressure when we get pregnant. Like it's very, very tough on Black women sometimes, especially as we get older. I also know that my mother in general had really, really tough pregnancies. So this idea that me, still entertaining, wanting to have a child as I got older, it just became almost like a death sentence or like just like a very, very dark thought to me, and it started to give me a lot of anxiety. And I was really, really suffering with that for a long time. And then during the pandemic, I got very, very sad because I turned 36, and I think I tried to meet one or two more people online. And one of them turned out to be a guy who had literal blogs written about him. I have the worst, by the way, I have the worst luck. I mean, if you haven't caught on to that yet, just with meeting partners, it just is horrible for me. And eventually I gave up. I haven't tried to do anything in a while, but giving up, I knew also meant I'm giving up on.
Okay.
Damn.
Let's move this perhaps. All right, well, go ahead and make a comment if you have one that is that's spilling over.
I mean, I get it. I get like all these things around her is just reiterating how she sees the world. I mean, it's gonna take a lot of work for herself to really heal herself in that way. I mean,
Okay, so let me say something now, because there's the incel category. Incels are the men, and then we're asking, oh, what does it mean to be a femcel? Obviously, it's not a sex thing. I think women can get sex. It's these other things. So, however, they want something. It's in that relationship slash sex category. They have something in common. Now, for an incel, but if it's a man, I would say, look, okay, what do you want? First of all, don't give me the bullshit about your particulars, right? Because I don't care about your one leg or so on and so forth, right? We all have our disadvantages, and it is rather, I think it's uncouth to go into them from a particular perspective, because what tends to be the case is, oh, Ike, you're like 6'4" and this and that, and you got what problems do you have? It's like, and then to go into the whole thing of, oh, look, I have problems too, I think it's a little uncouth. But trust me, we'll have to overcome stuff, some of which I can't even share in terms of the stuff that I have to overcome. So we all have our things.
Yeah.
However, I'm like, okay, what do you want? Okay, fine. There's several solutions to this, and I can even tell her the same thing. If it's a baby or / husband type situation, there are places in the world, and it goes to the comment that I left out there, saying how about leaving LA. I would tell Mr. Incel guy, okay, get a passport, right? Go somewhere else, because it's a marketplace type stuff, and you can find. I'll tell her, okay, well, go to Africa. Now, as a woman, I'll be like, hey, go to Africa, in East Africa, maybe Kenya or something like that. Sure, there are many men who would. As a matter of fact, as we know, we already discussed before, I would agree. I'm saying she's not an unattractive woman, right? So it's not like some, oh yeah, this is a special case. Maybe some plastic surgery is needed here. Okay, some intervention. Oh no, she's just whatever. Like, and this is the kind of thing where, oh, she looks this way, and if she took off of just a few pounds, she'll look even better. In other words, it's like, this is what you look like when you're a little chubby. Like, oh, then you don't have many problems. So I would say, okay, go. If this is really what you want, in other words, because I wanted things of which I had certain obstacles in my way, and I had to overcome the obstacles every day, so on and so forth. So if this is what you want, get a passport, go somewhere, find the deal, okay, make the deal, because there's still places in the world where this kind of a deal, and the fact that parenting, family is a business arrangement, something to be done, as opposed to some kind of thing that happens in the fairy world, that thing still exists. I'll tell the Filipino guy, hey, go to the Philippines, right? They like your dollars over there. And then, oh, but I don't want them to like me for my dollars. Like, shut up. Where do you begin and where does your dollars end? In other words, people have this thing with identity where they want to put, when the dollars helps their identity, like, yeah, my dollar, yeah, that's me and my dollars. It's me, right? But then when they want to play another game, they're like, oh, but I want you not to like me for that part. I want you to like me for this part. You're like, get the hell out of here. That's stupid. Identity is a conglomerate of all kinds of different parameters, none of which are real, right? And you can't be playing this weird game. Okay, you are who you are and what you've done and your accomplishments and your history and so on and so forth, the whole story. If that's what you want, go there and do that. If you want a family, there are places in the world, it's totally possible. Some people have done it. I know people who have done this from the female side as well. So what would you have to say to her about like actual solutions,
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. I mean, everything you said makes sense too. I mean, just you have to put yourself in front of the opportunities that you'd like. So if that means that she needs to look for people not in LA, I mean, that was kind of something that, from my experience, seemed to work out better for me anyway. I struggled dating guys that were in LA, but I've, had some good experiences with people that were not from LA but lived in LA. So I think you should first of all, just don't give up on yourself. Just believe that you deserve better. Just believe that there is someone out there for you. Or there's maybe a lot of people out there for you. You just have not put yourself in front of them yet. And she just has to, maybe try a different dating scene, or maybe, just I don't know how did she meet these guys, like online, right? She said she just met them online. Yeah, I mean, she just needs to try different things. I mean, I was never into online dating. I never did that. So for me, it was just
Do
like,
we feel more entitled in certain aspects of our life than others? For example, if you had a wedding business, wedding band business, Joan, and when your new website is on, make sure you bring it on and drop it here. This is not a marriage-friendly space here, but when they do decide to get married, if they do, I'm sure it'll be a big wedding, so you can get some money there. So, do we have a certain amount of entitlement in certain aspects of our life? If you have a wedding band business, for example, you're
what do
going
you
on to
mean?
certain. You do have a wedding band business.
Right.
I'm gonna say what I mean by that entitlement. If you have a wedding band business, for example, and you're doing certain kinds of marketing, it's not working. You're meeting certain kinds of clients. Maybe they're horrible, maybe they're not. You are not going to go sit down, write a blog, and so on and so forth. You're going to do these kinds of things that are akin to what I mentioned earlier. You're going to find a new market. You're going to try a new tactic. You're going to change marketing. You're going to change your website. You're actually upgrading your website right now, aren't you? Right?
Yep, I am.
But there's certain, and it goes to the comment right there on that I've highlighted. Compete, right? In certain areas of our lives, which are actually more cutthroat, as they say, all is fair in love and war. These other areas of our life are more cutthroat, but we, and this is everybody, seem to have the notion that things should be fair, things should just work out, people should come around and make it work for me, people should be giving me the right signals and pushing me as opposed to me forging my way out there. Do we have certain entitlements in certain aspects of our
yeah,
lives?
Totally. Yeah, I mean, everybody feels entitled to a certain extent. But again, you have to change certain aspects of yourself and your behaviors if you want to get to whatever it is that you want. And I don't know if she's changed anything about herself or in her. Yeah, I mean, I don't think she's changed anything about herself or her behaviors, or she hasn't mentioned anything like that, I mean, what's that? Oh, isn't smart. Yeah, I mean, she sounds smart. She sounds like she just hasn't been in front of the right type of guy, I mean, maybe she's looking at too many Travis Barkers. I don't know.
Okay. So, and here's another thing let me mention, okay? While we on the panel talking have intuitive bias. So, she is one of those people who needs to see examples of certain kinds of things. And maybe she's very, very much one of those, right? They call them sensors in the Myers-Briggs psychology stuff, right? They need to kind of have come in contact with the right kind of guy, or in order for them to know what certain things mean. Not very particularly introspective, right? Okay, as we notice, because the reason why I say we have that bias, obviously, right? If you look at my content, look at your content, and I know who you are and such, more of the intuitive, introspective types. But we need to understand that, and I'm sure we do, that you're the minority. This is not how people operate. The way you operate, and we're just like, oh, but you just gotta think about this. No. This is the story of most people's lives. Would you disagree with that, or do you, or not?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, I don't disagree. I mean, yes, there are. I know a lot of women that were that. I mean, I was that way too. Like when I was younger, I was very insecure, like the way she was. So I understand where she's coming from. But again, it took a certain point in my life where I had to really self-reflect and figure out what I wanted and how I see myself. So yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that women go through this all the time. Maybe men, I don't know, but for sure, I've known a lot of women that go through what she's going through.
Okay. So then at this point, we begin to see the things could be bad on the other side in terms of if I were to get a baby, because so many things could go wrong too. It's not all good. And by the way, and then doing the group thing again, for Black women, it's almost like saying, I stand here and I'm like, I don't know. I'm trying to increase my business by 30% this year, but the stats, black men tend not to be able to increase their business by 30%. Like, what is that? It's kind of like, but people do these things in areas where it's acceptable, where people are the cuddling, the extroverted feeling, the kumbayaing, and the whole warm blanket of, oh, let's suffer together is accepted in certain regards. But really, it doesn't make any logical sense to use statistics which are true of a group of people to talk about a specific person. I always say, look, if you meet some trailer trash white guy and you tell him you're more likely to have a rich uncle, it doesn't mean anything. He doesn't have a rich uncle. He has never had a rich uncle. There's no one ever been rich in his family. But the stats say that, right, he is likely to have a rich uncle. We have to understand that statistical language is not some kind of real language, or it's a language that should be left to a particular domain of analysis, a group type language. It's like quantum mechanics. When you get down to the individual, you can't talk about the position and the velocity of the atom of the electron at the same time. But when you group them, right, then you can say things about the aggregate. What we tend to do is we say these things about the aggregate, like, oh, well, you're more likely to have a rich uncle. Doesn't make any sense to meet somebody and tell them you're more likely to have $10,000 in the bank. Like, what does that even mean? I either do or I don't. What is the likely? So the idea of throwing out stats out there to kind of talk about yourself, as a this, as a that, is again part of blame mechanics land, which leads you to not thinking critically, which leads you to this particular problem where you're not solving problems in certain aspects of your life the way you should and the way you should, because you do so in other aspects of your life. So let's go ahead and see what else.
Ever having a baby. I'm giving up on holding that desire so close to my heart. For so long, I had kept it kind of as the forefront. I had stayed in a certain career because I wanted to make sure I had time to raise a family. I had not done things that I wanted to do with my life because I wanted to make sure I had time to raise a family. And the fact that I failed at every turn, finally do get pregnant and miscarry. Every guy I meet is horrible to me. 2020, I spent a lot of time just in tears. And then at the same time, I would look around and I would see that, people would there's this one story about this one actress or something. She met her boyfriend in 2020 during the lockdown. He DM'd her on Instagram. They welcomed a baby by the end of 2020. Like, I just started to realize how easy the process can be if it's meant to be. And that is where my perspective shifted. I started to look back at all of the bad, terrible love situations I've had. I started to look back at, my job situation, because a lot of people would ask me to be like, why don't you just freeze your eggs? Why don't you just do IVF by yourself? I could never afford that. I started to look at, my job situations and my housing situations and how, things could have gone one way, but they went this way. I tried this, but it didn't work. Closed door, closed door, closed door. And I just sat back one day and I was like, yes, definitely take, responsibility for the things that you could control. But there's been so much that has happened in your life that you couldn't even control. You could not control the fact that you've met every douche on the planet.
Okay, so she's continuing down the line there. Any more additional information that she's given that is salient or more, because she's transitioning now into, well, look, the sacrifices, the things because that she could not have done as well. She didn't have the money to, or she doesn't have the money for some options, which Mr. Incel guy might also tell me. And then what would I tell Mr. Incel guy, right? If this was a guy, as somebody likes to say, like, this was a guy, I would call him a loser, right? At a certain point of talking, okay? Because I don't believe you're a loser just because of a particular station or whatever. It doesn't matter. But it's a question of when you start to take a certain kind of, when you put the serenity prayer into practice, okay? You have a fine demarcation between the things you can control and things you cannot control, the wisdom to know the difference, and so on and so forth. That's what this whole thing is about. We all can fall into this particular trap, again, of blame mechanics. It is, trust me, okay? When I say we all, I mean like 98% of people, okay? I mean, people are just walking around doing this same thing right now, not knowing that that's what they're doing.
Mhm.
People are walking around right now, rather than looking at something critically in their life, they say, well, this is the way it has always been done. No one in my family has ever done this thing this other way. Well, how do you know it'll work? It wasn't meant to be. She just said that one, right? She said, I realized how easy things would be if it was meant to be. Okay. Highly deterministic. In other words, then why say anything then? What's meant to be will be, right?
Right.
Just let it happen. In other words, it's that whole kind of, I guess my business wasn't meant to be. You wouldn't do that. Is it a different world? Is it a different universe? Is it a different set of people that you're dealing with? No. People are people. But in the business world, in the marketplace world, when you put on a suit and you have a particular moniker or a title to your name, all of a sudden we treat the world as a place that is malleable, and we can act, and we have agency, and we fight and we sweat to make things happen. But in other aspects, we can easily fall into the story narrative, whereas, oh, it's just a grand story, and the Rothschild has already written me off, and the federal bank, whatever, and Epstein. And everything's locked up. Anyways, anything new that she's added so far, and the whole meant to be thing that you would like to comment on?
The meant to be thing. I used to believe in that strongly. If it's meant to be, it will be. I mean, sometimes it feels like it's certain things are meant to be, but there's also this thing like, what do you put out there to call forth those things? She still, like, again, she has a very negative outlook on her life, and all her past experiences, she's using that to have this identity of herself. She's like creating this identity. I'm just someone who's never going to get married. I'm never going to have kids. And I mean, I guess that's normal that people do that. But again, the self-reflection and realizing that, yeah, you can't control other people. You can't control that those guys were jerks, but you can control what type of guy you put yourself in front of. You can control, this guy's okay. He's being weird. Red flag. Time to go. Yeah. Again, yeah. The blaming thing. She's blaming everything around her, and she's not coming to this conclusion like, hey, maybe I need to change something.
Don't feel like we've met every douche on the planet if we wanted to take a particular perspective. In other words, what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to just normalize, because the whole point is, it is unlikely that you meet this person, regular human being, didn't grow up in a war zone, that has met every douche, right? That kind of thing. So what I'm saying is this: I know that I can wake up one morning and look at my history in a particular narrow lens, slice every person I've come across in terms of, let's say, in the romantic playing field, and say that, oh, they were all douchebags, and I've met all the worst people. Can we not all say that? In other words,
yeah,
it's like everyone can say, oh yeah, that last one did this, and this other one is that, and my current one, the current one. Yeah.
I mean, she hasn't said anything like, okay, what can I learn from this? That's something that she needs to ask herself. What can I learn from all these douchebag experiences?
Yeah, so not much credence for calling things that didn't go wrong. It's the whole sour grapes thing, or it's things that didn't go wrong, saying that those other people were douchebags. We can all say that. It's like, So anyways, let's see here. Let us see Wagwan.
Especially when they didn't present themselves that way at first. I can understand it if they, showed up and said, hey, I'm lying about everything. This isn't even my real last name. True story. But that's not how they presented themselves. There's obviously, and I believe very much so in like fate and destiny and a plan on your life. And I began to just think there's obviously a plan on your life that doesn't include you being a mom in the traditional way. And then I found this book. It's very loud, but it's called Living the Life Unexpected. And I found it during the pandemic when I was really, really hurting. I really, really wanted to be a mom, and I knew it wasn't happening, or it wasn't going to happen. And I was holding on to just this idea that I'd had of my life for the first 35 years of me being alive, the first 36 years. and just realizing that those things weren't going to happen. Like I was never going to wake up on Christmas morning and see my baby, you know, in the bed and go get him in, or her, and go celebrate Christmas with my family. My parents are not going to be grandparents. I'm not, you know, all of these things I went over and over and over in my head, and I just cried and cried and cried. And I found this book, and this book is all about dealing with that grief when you're childless, not by choice. It also gave me a label to put on my childlessness. I am someone who, to the best of my knowledge, doesn't fight with physical infertility, though I might have been one of those women who consistently miscarried. I'll never know, right? But I am someone who fights with social infertility. And what that is you're a person who just in your childbearing years, you were not able to come into a situation that would have allowed you to bring a baby into the world. And there are so many women, especially in the millennial generation, who carry that label. And once I had a name for what it was like I was able to let go of trying. I was able to delete the dating apps. I was able to say, you know what? I don't think I'm going to do that. I'm not going to go and look up anymore, you know, places where I can go to test my fertility. Like, I'm going to let that go. I'm not going to spend time, you know, hate scrolling through new baby pages and baby announcements on Instagram. Like,
Whoa, Joan, is that a thing? People out there hate scrolling pictures of babies, like,
Oh
this
my gosh.
damn ugly baby. I hate you, Joan.
I didn't know people did that. Wait, she was scrolling through baby.
Yeah, like, hate, you know, yeah, like, God damn you bastards and your filthy babies. These babies disgusting. Anyways, you know, it's not the real point. The thing is, ladies and gentlemen, okay, as you know, because you are a person who comes to this channel and comes to this particular segment, there is something here, even if it's difficult, something here that is necessary, something here that is apropos and apt, relevant to everybody, as I've been making it clear the whole time. The fact that self-esteem is something that comes from within and has nothing to do with, social awkwardness, social skills, shyness, introversion, extroversion. Those are just you'll figure that out. Figure out how to play that game. But self-esteem is really from the inside. And it takes a lot of accountability and avoidance of blame mechanics so that you can think critically and look at the world as a place where your actions matter in defining yourself. So this is not about bullshit, as it never is about over here, right? This is about something that affects us all, a particular hole that we can all fall down into if we don't watch ourselves. And also this gives us insight. And by the way, shout out to Snuggles for the super chat. I forgot it. Let me see if I can get back to Snuggles super chat and then shout out the other people, or maybe too late. Would you mind reading Snuggles super chat on the screen?
Pardon me for not donating earlier. I was busy trying to disseminate what you were all talking about. I'm still confused. Who is to blame?
Blame.
Yeah.
Anyways.
I mean, the thing that saw this coming, but then the label, when she said she found the label to identify with, I mean, that's a huge issue that right there, you know. I have a problem with labels. I mean, unfortunately, that's part of our society's label is, you know, who we identify as. But now that she's in that label, I mean, if that's helped her, you know, that book helped her in that way to figure out what's wrong with her. And there's nothing wrong with her, but now she found something to validate her.
Notice the external aspect again.
Right, you know.
This whole time, she's been looking for something in the outside world the whole time. I want to be like this. I am not the standard of beauty. In other words, number one, there's a black hole aspect of like insatiable desire for external validation. Okay, that is a part of what I see here, and it's a part of what we can all fall into, right? And this validation is supposed to come from the external world. In other words, what I'm saying is this: it's not that she's not being approached. She wants to be approached like that girl.
Right.
She wants to be the girl that everyone is drooling over. And guess what? If that were to happen, you think she'll be satisfied? You know the nature of novelty and so on and so forth. We know the nature of this dopamine game, right? So it's like, oh, trust me, if I were just like that, I'll be satisfied. It's like we already kind of see the issue there. So I'm sorry, I kind of cut you off there, but if you can continue with this whole label thing, because it's another aspect of the whole external focus that she has.
Right. I mean, just based on how she's presents herself and how she sees the world, she's definitely needs she's the type that just needs to have external validation. She needs something outside of her to tell her this is who you are. And I mean, that's sad, that she has to have other people tell her what she is and what she isn't. I don't know what her support circle looks like, what her friends are like. And I mean, obviously her parents raised her a certain way to think a certain way, but it's sad that like she hasn't grown beyond what's around her. Like I don't know what kind of support system she has. Like maybe she has friends that or maybe she doesn't really have good friends. I don't know. I mean, yeah, again, she sounds like someone who needs external validation. So she's not getting that from anybody. And now this book, fine, if it helps her to kind of come to terms with where she's at. Okay, now what are you going to do about it?
Really looking for terminology.
Yeah, now what are you going to do about it? The problem now that she's going to have is that she put this label on her. So does that mean she's going to continue living her life because of that label?
Yes, I think that this is the thing. And what is sad is if you are this type, it is quite likely, more likely than not, that you live your whole life this way, never getting out of the Storyville of the external world, having not much internal story of your own, always looking for something to hook onto, always worshiping these false gods and idols and so on and so forth. And most people just live their lives through that way. What I'm saying to you cutthroat hustler types out there, if you don't do this, you already have a huge leg up. If you get out of blame mechanics, you already have a huge advantage. If you look at the world as a place where action can be taken and where you have some agency and so on and so forth, rather than talking about who's to blame, speaking to perhaps even Snuggles' question, like, oh, I still don't know who's to blame, like in terms of that. Blame does not matter. Doesn't matter that Jeff Bezos hit you with the truck. Jeff Bezos is not going to take the steps on the treadmill for you to learn how to walk or do all the therapy or do everything. Jeff Bezos cannot do it. Hence, you have a huge advantage. And if you're only the 10% over here listening to this, well, then listen well. Listen well. And we know that this particular shape, the shape of this particular sin, right, is one that can fit into our lives as well. So we know in the areas in which we're not taking accountability, the areas where we're maybe doing some of the blame mechanics and the external stuff and the kind of, hey, it was not meant to be type stuff. This is the reason why we look at these kinds of things, so that we whip ourselves into shape in that regard and not fall in that way. Do you mind reading the super chat
from Dr. Doug? Social infertility equals socially awkward.
I guess social infertility is the term. Social infertility, someone due to social reasons cannot get what they want. It's not like they're barren and so on and so forth. It's not biological or medical infertility, I would say, perhaps. Okay, and shout out to Dr. Thunder. Would you mind reading that?
As bad as she says her experiences were, as an average woman, a better than average guy faces far worse with respect to access.
Yeah, because what are the numbers? I believe 80% of women have reproduced, but only 40% of men, which makes sense. In other words, your genes are mainly from women because women can always reproduce. But a lot of men tend not to. A lot of men are not worthy. A lot of men are either they die in a war, or they're the lower end of the rung and they're being oppressed by some other man, and so on and so forth. So that tends to be the case. So, however, comparisons need not apply, right? Because it doesn't matter, because I was saying that even if an incel were to come to me, the male version of this, I would be like, okay, what do you want? And here are the parameters by which you solve the problem. Again, the whole responsibility mechanics versus the blame mechanics. It's your responsibility. It's what you can do about it. And that's it. That's the end of the story. If you go the route of, let me go find a book that tells me that it's okay and that I'm this person, It's called social infertility. Oh, I get it now. I'm a victim of a condition in society. The society creates these kinds of people called socially that kind of a thing. If that's the path you go down, well, then you're not going to be very successful with regards to getting certain things that you want in your life. You may parlay that into some kind of success, like maybe a big YouTube channel or something, or maybe you write a few books about this kind of a thing. But it is not the way to go around getting the things that you actually want in your life from day to day by playing the blame mechanic. So let's go ahead and continue and just wrap it up. I know that we split this into two parts. We built the plane as we flew it. We were not to be taken down. Joan, where are we? So let's see. Fair use.
That's good. Let them have that. I'm going to accept what my path in life is going to be. So that being said, I decided to leave my job. There's no reason to hold on to this career that's great for raising kids if I don't have any kids. I decided to let myself study things that I'd always loved. And I decided to also think about the very real negatives that can come with raising a baby. I've worked in education for 10 years. I know that a baby is very cute, but a 7th grade boy who curses out his teacher, won't sit in his chair, throws furniture across the room, and has 2 loving parents at home that have given him everything. But for whatever reason, he can't compute it up here in order to act right at school. I know that that's not cute, and that happens a lot. I have family members who have dealt with children that have severe mental illness, and I've seen it just emotionally exhaust them to where they're barely standing up at the end of the day. I know for a fact that a lot of pregnant women deal with so many issues after they give birth to the baby, from losing their teeth to losing their hair to losing the function of their body in certain ways. And I began to look at these things that I had previously thought of as all worth it, right? As long as I can have that baby, they're all worth it. And I began to almost be grateful that I was never going to have to deal with it. I am never going to have to say, oh, well, that was my body before babies and this is my body. Like,
okay, let's end it there. Let's decide to call it a day there and give our final commentary and such, because I think we get the idea, because we've gotten to the sour grapes part, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, that baby stuff was so horrible, it could kill you and you could lose your teeth and this and that and the other could happen, and so on and so on and so forth. In the West, given the data, which is rather statistically insignificant in terms of you looking at, again, that whole, well, you're likely to have a rich uncle type thing, which is, kind of silly. But why the need to do this kind of a reversal? Like, if you wanted something and you didn't get it, why the need to then be like, oh, well, could have been horrible. As a matter of fact, I could have choked on that bone.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like she was just doing everything, her job, whatever situation is, just for this idea that she wanted. She never did anything really for herself.
Mm-hmm.
She never really did anything like, hey, this is me. I'm number one priority. Her priority was everything beyond her, and that's why she's just in that cycle.
It wasn't the problem is not that she did everything for her baby. It was that she was doing everything seemingly for something else, and now she's doing something else. Everything, it seems, for this notion of this particular category that she's now put herself in, right. And now she's beginning to already define, like, look, you see, I don't have to do with that, I don't have to do with that as this kind of a person. So, let me go ahead and just say a few things, and I'll give you kind of the last word. It's never the last word. There's always a banter back and forth a little bit more after that. Or Aaron B might say something foolish in the chat.
He's been quiet.
He's been quiet?
Yeah, I don't know, in the last few minutes.
So there's a thing about insecurity, which everybody has. It is not being secure, which is the objective mode, which is, oh, I'm literally not secure in this particular relationship. It could fall apart at any time. Literally not secure in this job. It could fall apart at any time. Really not secure with this particular, whatever it may be, right? And then there is the feeling of being secure, which will be more applicable to people who have more emotions or who are more emotional, right? And tend to be more, and as we know, women tend to be more emotional. Well, you have emotional men out there too. So there's a feeling of security, which has nothing to do with whether we're actually secure or not. You could be with the best guy, right? But your black hole of external validation, that need, is never going to be satisfied with it. You're still feeling insecure, even if you're very secure. objectively speaking, right? And that thing has a lot to do with externalization, which we have seen. Blame the Catholic Church, blame your parents, blame the school, blame the people who did not approach you, the people who, the fact that you were attracted to a particular type, you did not even own that. It was almost like, well, that's just how God made me. And then blame all the douchebags that you've met in the world. That's why my business is not successful. That's why I'm not able to get the right job. That's why people keep firing me. The white man is holding me back, this, that, and the other, whatever it may be. And then it stops you from thinking critically in real time to solve problems. And that's why you're not successful, generally speaking, in life. Okay. So again, insecurity, so not being accountable and responsible, and then not having critical thinking, therefore screwing up everything, is the point of this whole conversation. What are your thoughts, Joan?
Yeah, I mean, listening to her was pretty difficult. I mean, I try to feel for her, but it's, again, you always have to start with yourself, asking yourself, what do I want? What do I feel like I deserve? What do I think I want my path to be? And then you just go off of that. Who cares about the stats and like what people say about you? You know, anything can happen. You just have to go for it and just focus. Obviously focus on yourself. You got to focus on what you want. And then it just, it does work out in that way when you stop putting negative shit out there. But back to, the point with her, it's just, insecurity, everybody has that. But at the end of the day, you don't have to live with that. You can move on. You can build yourself up. Only you can. Stop blaming everything around you. You have to change your perspective. I can blame everything in my past, but what does that do? It just holds me back.
Why are you changing your website, by the way? Or, okay, is this just a regular upgrade or whatever? And was it part of a plan of you guys, or what's this 2.0? What's the name of your business again?
It's called Boogie Agenda.
Yes. Sorry. Boogie Agenda 2.0, taking over the world. What's the deal with that?
Oh, we're just trying to present ourselves for a certain clientele with a certain amount of money.
You're putting yourselves out there. So what does that mean? That you have pearls in the pictures of yourself?
Something like that. Yeah. We were, did a lot of research, like, okay, what looks expensive, So we're just upgrading the website to look more expensive, because that's the kind of clients we want to work with. The more, just from our experience so far, the more money they have, the easier they are actually to work with. And the budget ones, like, I don't know why they have so many expectations with a budget.
So you say people with money it's not just that they're easy to work with and they're easygoing and they're not worried about the money. Possibly that's why they're not so grating on your nerves. But
Exactly.
You're saying that they actually have less expectations, or they're more carefree, if you will?
So far, just from our experience, so far, who knows how it goes down the line. But so far, I think the people that know exactly what they want and they're willing to just pay the money for it, like, I feel like they just trust that we're experts and then we'll take care of it. Whereas the ones with the lower budgets are like, well, I want it like this, I want it like that. Can you do this? Can you do that? And
That is true in many businesses, big companies that have big money tend to be very easy to work with and actually have fewer expectations. They're more reasonable. It's kind of crazy. It makes you wonder about in other words, there's this thing of that, success leaves clues, and perhaps being such a penny pinching, trying to squeeze every bit of value out of something, trying to overly control things. Perhaps, would you say that's a block to success? Maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen it.
All right. Okay, so I think we were able to cope through that video, and wasn't bad. I started out by giving her a compliment, by the way, and also I like to mention in these that this is not, I don't do personal stuff. Like, look, I don't care about you, your daughter, her softball game, your cousins, your niece. I don't care. I don't give a crap about people, right? And the people in this channel know exactly what I mean, right? D, Aaron B, Dr. Thunder, you know what I mean. I'm just fine with people, but I don't do stuff for people stuff like, I'm going to pick on her. I'm going to exclude her from the team. I'm going to bring this one in. I'm going to get the F out. I ain't got time for that shit. So for me, it's about ideas and it's about getting ish done. It's about outcomes, inputs and outputs as well. And also it's about being able to share the gifts that one finds when one is a very introspective person. I don't take credit for being a very introspective person. The stars align, you know, it was meant to be, John. That I was so I just happen to be that type, right? And then with other things aligned, I just spent a lot of time. I spent a lot of time in there, a lot of time in concept land. So it's about bringing ideas, using exemplars, if you will, so that we can see. Because I don't give a crap about any of the social dynamics or who cares about who went back to the table, who's dealing with. I don't give a shit. So, ladies and gentlemen, we will definitely be back next week. Shout out to Joan. Hopefully, your website will be up and running again soon, and we can go ahead and put it down here put a link. If you have not subscribed to Joan's channel, go ahead and check her out, Joan Quinto. Go ahead and check her out. Moderators, Aaron B, D, Blind Guy, his wife, their life. If you have not already been dropping her link, go ahead and drop that in so that people can. And shout out to Gail Lockett, by the way. Shout out to Gail Lockett. She's in line to win the best moderator. She definitely has to be in the running in O'Shea's award show coming soon. But ladies and gentlemen, we shall take ourselves out with the usual outro. Thank you all for showing up. And until next time, peace. We are out of here.
In the den of iniquity, vicinity no pretty, calamity fi hit we any moment, what's a pity. Tomorrow never certain, what was behind the curtain, the face of evil lurking with the shifty eyes averting. It's not a steady bubble that either pop or topple, many will fall and stumble, let the dozers gather rubble. From LA to Colorado, Guinea to Burkina Faso, cannon could reach the towers and the troops will storm the castle. I say, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. I say, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. With the rubble steady rising, and hearts are compromising. Convictions here are stifling, making evil appetizing. The fists are steady forming, and countenance is falling. Defenses are withdrawing, possibilities are falling. In these your circumstances, evil will make advances. Pick up your sword and lances, and be sure to take your stances. Victory is never promised, the battle is upon us. Gather the brave and honest, and the righteous in your corners.
Wagwan. Today is Wednesday. I'll be here tomorrow on Thursday to talk about some things, Right? I wane. I love to see my people living in love. I hate to see them fighting and swimming in blood. Enough neglect the farming, starve in the mud. Yet they want to be the first to eat the food when it bought. Oh, slave masters tell them all the while, stop war and till the soil. Stop fighting for land and oil. We'll be here tomorrow, and we're going to elucidate the point of why meditation helps you with the critical thinking piece, the getting away from the blame mechanics piece, the thing that we just discussed today, the problem that we discussed today. What is the key to critical thinking? Forget the fact that it sounds like BS and you're annoyed with the people who tell you to think critically. I'm annoyed too. It's annoying. It's BS. Adding critical thinking is superfluous. However, it is an emotional hangup, really, that they're trying to tell you to get over. The emotional hangup that is tied up with blame mechanics. the emotional hang up that makes it such that people will hold other people back for reasons which they do not even understand. We all know the monkey experiment, right? Whereby there are bananas hung up there. If the monkey goes up, they get shocked, right? Everybody gets shocked, right? But then they cycle the monkeys through such that the monkeys are now stopping each other from getting the banana. No monkey in the den knows the reason why. They don't even feel the shock anymore. And then you have all these blames around and scarcity mindset about why we can't get the banana. It must be you, must be you, must be you, so on and so forth. Okay? So that is the problem, ladies and gentlemen. If you know a way for the youth to get a break, my brother, you should tell them. Because in the streets all they learn is the greed, the force and the rebellion. The stripes in the streets will attest to the strife. From the cold turnpike lays a bloody knife. So if you know a way to put an end to the fight, my brother, you should tell them. Ha. From the halls to the fire escape, rusted cages and pendants for sale, streets are littered where dreams are broken. Let your true words be spoken. Higher, higher and further away, sail the dreams of the weak and the frail. Walk the path that the mind has chosen. Let your conscience be open. You know a way for the youth to get a break, my brother, you should tell them. Because in the streets all they learn is the greed, the force and the rebellion. The stripes in the streets will attest to the strife. By the cold turnpike lays a bloody knife. My brother, you should tell them.